I am continuing in my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am continuing reading in a chronological order, according to event, not according to publication or volume, so I'm skipping around a bit as I move along. We are still in 2 Corinthians. We've read his initial salutation, a somewhat of a defense of his actions, but our last chapter, he seems to be following up on something that he wrote about in 1 Corinthians, and talking about, if they are willing to forgive and bring a wayward brother back into their congregation, Paul is also willing to forgive. That's what we read last. It's actually that was a very touching chapter. But now we continue on, and this will now be chapter 3. In this video, we have a Joseph Smith translation. And what the Joseph Smith translation is, this is a translation or correction done by Joseph Smith to restore those passages that have been lost or corrupted over the years. 2 Corinthians chapter 3. Do we begin again to commend ourselves? Or need we, as some others, epistles of commendation to you, or letters of commendation from you? Ye are our epistle, written in our hearts, known and read of all men. For as much as ye are manifestly declared to be the epistle of Christ ministered by us, written not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God, not in tables of stone, but in fleshy tables of the heart. And such trust have we through Christ Godward, not that we are sufficient of ourselves to think anything as of ourselves, but our sufficiency is of God, who also hath made us able ministers of the New Testament, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter killeth, but the Spirit giveth life. But if the ministration of death, written and engraven in stones, was glorious, so that the children of Israel could not steadfastly behold the face of Moses for the glory of his countenance, which glory was to be done away, how shall not the ministration of the Spirit be rather glorious? For if the ministration of condemnation be glory, much more doth the ministration of righteousness exceed in glory. For even that which was made glorious had no glory in this respect, by reason of the glory that excelleth. But if that which is done away was glorious, much more that which remaineth is glorious. Seeing then that we have such hope, we use great plainness of speech, and not as Moses, which put a veil over his face, that the children of Israel could not steadfastly look to the end of that which is abolished. But their minds were blinded, for until this day remaineth the same veil untaken away in the reading of the Old Testament, which veil is done away in Christ. But even unto this day, when Moses is read, the veil is upon their heart. Nevertheless, when it shall turn to the Lord, the veil shall be taken away. Now the Lord is that Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. But we all, with open face, beholding as in a glass the glory of the Lord, are changed into the same image from glory to glory, even as by the Spirit of the Lord. Two things. In the beginning of this chapter, we have him, do we need letters of commendation? Do we need to bring our references to you? Or do we need to get references from you to others? Your conduct, your faith, is recommendation enough. People see you, and they know that we are ministers of Christ, because you are living as Christians. That is very beautiful. But then he goes into this comparison. The law was given that it can only bring death. The law can only condemn, as I've said in other videos. Christ brings life. The law is still glorious, as is shown in the fact that when God gave the law, Moses came down from the mountain. He had to put a veil over his face because the glory of God was still shining from him. So the law is still glorious. It is still of God. But the Spirit of life that comes through Christ is far more glorious than the law. And again, talking about the law of Moses. And when he talks about the New Testament and the Old Testament, he's not talking about the scriptures that we have today. He's talking about the covenants. The old covenant under the law of Moses. The law of Moses had no power but to condemn. But we are under the new covenant, and the new covenant is the covenant of Abraham, the covenant of the Spirit that began with Adam and is restored in Christ and is the power of salvation and life. That's what he's talking about. And I like his analogy. Paul does this a lot. He goes back and he looks at the stories of the Old Testament and he makes analogies. Now, when Moses' face was shining and he came down from the mountain, did that happen because God knew that Paul was going to make an analogy of it, 1,500 years later? Probably not. It happened because it happened. But Paul is taking that and making an analogy. The law became a covering, a veil that was put over the face of Moses, the veil put over the face of Moses, symbolizing the law that separated Israel from the highest glory. Those who turn to Christ have that veil removed. Those who do not turn to Christ keep the veil on and therefore cannot see the greater glory that is being offered. And in the modern day, most Christians once again have placed the veil over their minds so that they cannot see the greater glory that God is offering in his restored church. It's a great analogy. Now, there are a couple of Joseph Smith translations in this chapter. In verse 4, the King James reads, "And such trust have we through Christ to Godward." A little awkward. Simplify it, "And such trust have we through Christ toward God." Much simpler. And in verse 16, the King James says, "Nevertheless, when it shall turn to the Lord." This is corrected to, "Nevertheless, when their heart shall turn to the Lord." So, the veil is removed. Right now there's a veil over their hearts, over their minds. When their hearts turn to the Lord, the veil is removed. We leave that here, and we will be reading chapter 4 next. So I'll see you there.